Welcome to Scoreboard, the podcast that explores how athletes, both current and retired, define success beyond the game. Each episode dives into the mindset, financial decisions, and career choices that shape their personal scoreboard, whether they're still in the arena or transitioning to life after sport. From victories to challenges, we reveal how athletes take charge of their own paths and decide what truly matters on their scoreboard of life. I'm your host, Chris Titley, and welcome to Scoreboard. Hi, it's Chris Titley here as part of the Scoreboard podcast. I'm joined by Olympic volleyballer Mark Nicolaidis. Mark, thank you so much for being part of this podcast.
Hey, Chris. Thanks for having me.
Mark, 2024, before we get on to your New Year's resolutions and what's happening in 2025, I'm keen to understand how big a year that was for you.
Yeah, it was absolutely massive. It'll definitely go down as, one of those years that was kind of a pinnacle in my lifetime. At the start of the year, my teammate Isaac and I sat in the room, sat in an office with our coaches, and we were kind of planning out the year with Paris on the horizon. And we were in the midst of the qualification race to get there, and we kind of had to change our plan and go down a different qualification pathway. So we kind of decided in that moment to throw all our eggs into that. Decisions on the court, off the court, whatever it was, everything we do is 100% just to qualify. And then once we get there, then we'll kind of decide what the next part of the year looks like. And 6 months down the track, we were able to qualify in China. And then a couple of weeks later, we were on the plane to Paris. And that in itself was, a massive 3 weeks. And then kind of through the back half of the year, we were able to have our first proper off season and take some time to reflect on that. But yeah, the whole year itself was a bit of a blur. But when you look at each of the individual moments, there was so many.
The 3 weeks in Paris, I'm keen to get a glimpse of what it's like to be an Olympic athlete, the intensity levels of the sport, and then also, outside of that, when everyone sort of lets their hair down towards the end and there's closing ceremonies, etc., and the camaraderie around the team.
We kind of went into the games themselves, wanting to make the most of it and experience everything they had to offer. Because it is a bit of a beast. And, for us, our first games, you hear stories of people who have been to 4 or 5 games, and for them, it's just like another tournament. They know what they're doing, and all the kind of distractions there are quite easy for them. So we went into it with a bit of an open mind, and being part of the beach volleyball, we're lucky to be in the village for the entire 3 weeks of the competition. Once you get knocked out, you still get to stay in the village. So we had the full 3 weeks, and when we first got there, our kind of the first 48 to 72 hours was one training a day, and it was just go and find out, go and explore the village, go and do and see all the things that you want to do, because you don't want your mind running once competition starts of, there's this to do, and your focus not being there. So the first 48 hours was like, just go and do that. And then once kind of you're in that competition zone, you lock in and go as deep as you can in the tournament.
That first 48 hours, 72 hours, did you sort of run into anyone famous or spot anyone having a coffee and you're like, oh, that's such and such?
Yeah, absolutely. There was so many, a lot of tennis stars, a lot of volleyball stars that, were kind of close to me that I've watched on TV, and I've followed along their journeys, and it's really crazy to kind of see them. I was a bit starstruck, walking around the village, and there's Andy Murray just riding his bike along, and Carlos Alcaraz in the dining hall, and it's a very different place.
Mark, the beach volleyball journey for you want to take me back a little bit to the early days, and the sort of the passion for the sport and where it began?
Yeah, absolutely. So very early days, I actually played basketball for 5 years before I started volleyball. And kind of that first moment I touched a volleyball, I was done with basketball. It like my love for the game was there from the very first time I touched the ball, and I think it was very different. A lot more of a team game because you can only touch the ball once in a row. So there's no ball hogs, and if you're not part of a team and you're not buying into that, you can't win. So I think that was the initial thing that drew me to the sport, was that real team aspect. And I got into volleyball because both my brothers played at school, 2 older brothers. So, I was following in their footsteps, and basically I just took every opportunity I could to play more. So I started off at school, and then it was social leagues, club, and then I started playing beach volleyball in the summertime, and chasing representative stuff here and there, and kind of one thing led to another, and then I was training 2 times a day every day before and after school, and it really kind of took over my life before I knew it.
There's been a significant rise in the popularity of volleyball over the last decade in Australia with kids. I'm interested to know the pathways, I suppose, and the opportunities that you had versus the opportunities that exist now for people to become a professional like yourself.
100%. It's one of the most gender neutral sports in the entire world, and incredibly popular overseas. And I'm hoping that it one day is like that in Australia. And I think we've already seen that just in the last 12 months to 2 years of kids are getting younger and younger when they're first getting into the sport. And I know for me, seeing kids as young as, like year 3 now playing volleyball, which when I started when I was 15, and, you never would have seen that before. So pathways wise, it's really kind of unique in that you can really do a lot of it on your own, and especially in the beach volleyball, in the lead up in those junior years, you can kind of write your own story and go and play all the state tours and national tour events on your own back, and you don't have to be selected or qualify for those. And once you kind of get up into the, I'd say like under 19s, you start getting selected for camps and part of the national program. So, but there is lots of avenues for kids, and especially college now too.
Yes, in America. Yep.
Yeah. So since we don't have, a really big domestic indoor league like we have overseas, we do have, a state and national tour on the beach volleyball side of things, but there's avenues to go through the pathway in Australia itself, or to head overseas, play at college, and then come back.
I'm curious to know about the teamwork in volleyball. You mentioned there's the pathways, and there's lots of individual aspects that you can make your own way, but then obviously there's different the people that you get partnered with, or there's different teams that you might make, but then it becomes a team thing and becomes a very close thing with your partners, particularly in 2. I'm curious to know how that works, and how you go along with your partner Isaac, particularly in the Olympics, and playing well with him.
Yeah, so it's a funny one because in beach volleyball, as you said, there's only 2 of you, so it's very much like a relationship, and we spend 6 months of the year overseas and traveling together and staying in the same room. And we often joke about, we spend more time almost in the same bed than we do with our girlfriends. And it's very unique in that aspect. As well as, on the court with 2 of you, you come off from a game, and 9 times out of 10, if you lose, it's one of your faults. And it's kind of sometimes hard to go about the mental side of it in that aspect. But, Isaac and I have one of the most, I don't know what the word is, but our bond kind of goes a lot further than I would say other teams do. And both being smaller players compared to the rest of the tour, we have that strong bond that kind of gives us our edge against everyone else.
When you say small, I'm just how tall are you?
I'm 6 foot.
Okay, right. Okay, so there's some players out there that would be like basketball is potentially like the 7 foot plus, maybe even.
Yeah, 100%. I'd be be in the shortest 5 on tour, I'd say. Yep. And Isaac's also undersized as a blocker as well. Some of the teams we come up with, both the guys will be, 6'11", 6'8". So, yeah, very undersized.
Can you talk about the circuit that you play in, or the schedule that you play in, and where that physically and geographically is around the country and all the world, and the pathway to become a professional beach volleyball player?
Yeah, 100%. So basically, it's in the name. We chase summer around the world, and for the rest of the world, like their off season is kind of during their winter, during our summer, but that's when our domestic league is, and the national tour. So inherently, we don't usually have an off season, but the international season usually starts about mid-March in South America, Brazil, Mexico, and then transition through mid-year, head to Europe, and kind of back half of the year is Middle East and Asia. And every year the calendar looks different, but basically follows summer.
And you're originally from Brisbane, but now you're based in Adelaide. Is there a reason why that you're based in Adelaide? Is that something to do with the volleyball, or is it just a move just to get away from Brisbane, maybe?
No, so the national team is based out of Adelaide. So originally we were at the old Sassy here, but we've just recently moved into the brand new facility that they've built, which is incredible.
Yeah, and Mark, you did touch on it before about the sort of the mental side of the game as well as the physical side of game, and getting on top of that and making sure you've got a partner to play with, and that you're in the right framework and you're in the right mindset. How much time do you spend on that?
A fair bit of time. And as part of being, one of those smaller teams, Isaac and I have a very analytical kind of scope that we work with for the game. So a lot of it is mental capacity. And I think the biggest time we worked through the mental stuff was in the lead up to Continental Cup, the qualifying event. So we spoke with some of the guys that have been before, because it's a brutal format, and if you don't kind of prep yourself for all the scenarios, both good and bad, you can find yourself in the moment, and at a tournament like that where you've got one chance, you lose, your Olympic dream is over. You kind of have to be prepared going into that. So we did a lot of work beforehand, and I know both of us spent countless sleepless nights, thinking about mostly the depressing lows of what happens if you match point down, and like, what are you going to do in those moments? So once we got there, it was, we've already thought about everything. We've seen it in our heads. We've seen what it's going to be like, and so you're kind of ready for it.
With the visualization of all that, did any of it actually pan out to what was going in your head beforehand? Yeah,
definitely a little bit hit and miss. We did face match points down. We actually faced 3 match points down across our qualifying event. So, we got there, and it's hard though when you visualize it beforehand to when you're actually in the moment and going, oh shit, like this could be it. We lose this point and we're done, you know.
Yeah. What was going through your head then? Like, is it positive thinking, or is it focus, or are you in the flow they talk about? Like, what was going through your head when you're a match point down, thinking you're 30 seconds away from not even talking about Paris and walking off disappointed?
I can't even remember what was going through my head during those points. It was like definitely a little bit of like the realization of, oh, this is it. But then you very quickly, you know, snap into this mode of just go mode. You've got to throw everything at it to kind of get there, and that's all you can do. So I remember the look on Isaac's face after we had won the qualifying game, and you know, it was completely blank. And I think that's just a bit of a reflection on, you know, whatever was going through your mind, and then afterwards it's just like, what just happened? And
yeah, like I wouldn't say shock. I mean, maybe shock, but there's about exhaustion and relief, and there's a whole lot of probably different emotions going through. I'm also interested as a professional athlete that, you know, kids growing up, there's a huge emphasis on winning, and obviously that's where the dopamine kicks in, and there's a big thrill for winning, and you experienced that at that particular pre-tournament. But I'm also need to teach my kids and other kids around the fact that people do lose, and they can lose quite often. Your ledger of win-losses in your life, how do you reckon you are?
Good question. Not sure, but it is a funny one because I think about it a lot. You know, at a tournament, there's always 50% losers and 50% winners in every game. So, and then in beach volleyball, it's not like if you're not winning the bronze medal or winning the gold medal, you're finishing your tournament on a loss. So whatever that might be, even if it's your best result ever, and you've say never achieved a semi-final, and you get there and then you lose both your games and you come fourth, it's hard to put a good reflection on the tournament when you think about it. Maybe it's your best result ever, but you've just finished on 2 losses after doing something special. So it is something you do have to come to terms with, and, you know, reflect on tournaments as a whole, as opposed to just, you know, single games on their own. But yeah, it is a funny concept, I think, of sometimes being okay with losing. But, you know, as I would say 99% of athletes think, like, you just hate losing. You've got that competitive bone in your body, and you just absolutely hate losing.
Yeah, I'd imagine that is the case, and the competitive nature is why you play sport as well. I'm also, when it comes to, like, you know, competing against a particular pair, and that, you know, you're going to compete against a particular pair, how much research do you do on that pair, or some data, etc., around, like, actually we think there's a bit of weaknesses on the left-hand side or whatnot? Is there a fair bit of that, or is it like, let's just get ourselves right?
Very much teams are different in this aspect. Some teams like to, you know, not watch too much footage and kind of focus on their own stuff going into games. Isaac and I watch a lot of footage. As I said, we're quite analytical, and I think for us, like, we've got a weapon in that Isaac thinks about the game very, very intently, and he's got something very special that I really appreciate, and I don't think many other people have. But the way he sees the game, he needs to watch a lot of footage, and, you know, he goes even into the physical aspects of the other team, the way their body works and everything, to formulate game plans. So I think every team's different, but I'd say we probably do a lot of review before we go and play teams.
And then contrary to that, when you come off and that you lose, I remember one of the previous interviews with Jared Lyons, the AFL football player. Chris Fagan said at the Lions this year, we either we win or we learn. We don't lose. The reflection upon losing in the games, how much do you do on that?
Yeah, a lot as well. I think because you go into it having plans, you can kind of reflect on why we did something. Did it work? What did they do? And you kind of bring it down to aspects of like, why did the opposition play the way they did? And did we kind of play into their hands? And you can also look into the numbers themselves of side out percentages, which is volleyball specific, but side out percentages versus defense, hitting efficiencies. There's endless amounts of things that you can go into. So sometimes you can get caught up or lost in trying to do and think about too much after games. And that's something you really learn afterwards is what you need to focus on in those debriefs after games. But they definitely play a massive part.
And Mark, looking forward to the future, we're in 2025 now. What's on the horizon for yourself now from a beach volleyball point of view?
We've got a massive year ahead. Very exciting. We have the 2025 World Championships for beach volleyball, and they're actually going to be held in Adelaide in November. Right. So a home World Championships, which has been a long time coming, and it just goes to show how much the sport's growing. So that's the big one for this year in November. So the lead up to that, we head overseas mid-March, and that's kind of there's like a 6-month qualifying period for those world champs. So biggest one on the horizon is that for us. And then after that, we'll keep looking to the ultimate goal of getting a medal in LA.
Yeah, so that planning starts now. It's obviously Paris was so euphoric for you in terms of getting there and being part of that, but getting a taste for it, you obviously want another taste in 3 years' time.
100%. I came off Paris, more motivated than ever. I know a lot of athletes come off and they're just like relief and want a lot of downtime and time for reflection, but I kind of finished and I was more hungry than ever. And I think it's a luxury that we haven't had before, is having a full 4-year cycle. So Isaac and I had only joined the national team and played together for 2.5 years in the lead up to Paris. So having a full 4-year cycle is something we've never done before. And it's very exciting in that you can really almost go back to the basics, and you have the time to take two steps backwards to make 4 steps forwards in the long run. Whereas before Paris, it was every tournament's like, we need to be winning this event. We need to be winning this event to get these points here and there. But now we've kind of got that full 4-year development plan, which is very exciting.
And for someone that doesn't come from a volleyball background, is the plan to you stay with Isaac all the way through to the Olympics, barring, I suppose, injuries or things happening, etc.? Is that how it works?
Yeah, people work differently. Teams change within cycles. You see it from other countries, and it's very like case by case. But oftentimes people will stay together in a pair if it's working for a number of years.
Yep. And Mark, obviously the focus is on beach volleyball at the moment, and particularly 2025. But outside of that, is there a hobby? Is there something that tickles your interest that one day, at a point in time, you might go, actually, I can't play beach volleyball anymore, I want to do something else?
It's a bit of a funny one, because I actually had almost quit volleyball before I moved to Adelaide and joined the national team. I finished my degree in property economics, and I had actually signed a contract with Deloitte. So this was in November of 2021. I signed a contract with Deloitte to start in March of 2022. So I was kind of done with volleyball and was ready to move onto the corporate life. And I was sitting by the pool with my girlfriend, and she said, like, why don't you give volleyball one more crack and, like, go and chase it a little bit. So I called up the national team that day and was like, hey, will you have me come down? I've got 3 months until I start this new job. And originally they kind of said, you're too short, you're too unathletic, you're not what we're looking for at the moment. But I was like, I'll come down anyway, and, you can kick me out when I'm getting my ass handed to me. But so I literally went down the next week to Adelaide, and with plans to come home after 3 months and start my corporate life. And, I went down and some things fell into place, some opportunities came up, and I never came back. So yeah, it's an interesting one. I think now volleyball is my full-time thing, and I definitely have aspirations outside, but for now, I can't really see myself, doing that 9 to 5 or anything like that. But yeah, it's a bit off topic from hobbies and stuff like that. But
it's very important. I think fortuitously signing that contract probably spurred a chain of events to where you are now.
Very much so. It was like, if I'm going to go and do it, I've got this backup plan kind of, but and then was able to just take every opportunity that came.
And what did Deloitte say when you said, sorry, contract I signed? Can we not sign anymore?
He was like, I'll do the exact same thing. And Deloitte had always been one of my like dreams, and the whole interview process itself was a nightmare. But he was like, you're young, and like you can't do that. Like, not everyone gets the chance to do that, so you have to go and chase it.
No, that's right. I'm 43, mate. I can't do it anymore. So I've never had a chance to do that anyway. But I'm going to touch on you going back into that moment there of going back into the ringing them up and saying, would you welcome me in? You're obviously a very talented beach volleyball player. I'm curious as to know what you think you have over others when it comes to selection and getting to be the best volleyball that you are versus someone else that maybe wants to try and beat you, but no, they can't.
It's a good question. I ask myself that sometimes too. I very much like, I don't know how sometimes that I get some of the results I get, and especially now in the environment we have some young guys that are so incredibly athletic and talented, and I've already said that, like, when they kind of figure it out, like, I'm screwed. I think
it's not nothing to laugh, but I mean, certainly it's fact. But I also think like you're probably talking yourself down a little bit.
Yeah, I think the biggest things are, that competitiveness. I've always had it, and I always will. But there's lots of things. I think one of the biggest things is what I pride myself on, and that's making the guy next to me the best that they can be. I'm more than happy to not be the one winning all the points, and I'm more than happy to take all the errors. I don't care about the statistics in that sense, as long as we're winning. So I'm more than happy to do whatever it is for the team that needs to be done. And at the end of the day, if that means we win, that's kind of all that matters to me. So I think that's definitely one. But yeah,
On trait, yeah. How are you on the game of Scrabble, the social game of Scrabble, or a card game? Are you as competitive there as you would be on the court?
100%. I find it very difficult to turn the competitive switch off. Even going back and playing, social volleyball with friends, or just going down to the park and kicking a footy, and it's all about winning. Like, for me, it's hard to turn it off, and I know not everyone's like that. So, and even just going to play pickleball or tennis with my girlfriend, I know she's very much as competitive as I am. So, yeah,
make a good match.
Yeah.
Where do you reckon it's come from?
Definitely growing up with two older brothers. They both very sporty, both very competitive, and kind of we always were competing against each other when we were young, and I think that's where it all stemmed from. And I don't know, it's just always been. I love
the third. You can see it sometimes in one of my kids' sport that you go, "Oh, you're a younger brother. Yeah, I got two older brothers." You go, "Oh, yeah, you're very good," because they do get an opportunity to play against kids older than, and maybe some of their older brothers' mates, older sister mates, etc. In regards to backyard sport. While I'm touching on kids, what's some advice that you can give to aspiring athletes and people that are probably their teenage years now, who want to be an Olympian, who want to chase their dreams in competitive and professional sport?
Biggest things I'd say are probably, it's something that really helped Isaac and I, and kind of the motto we lived by was, you never know when your breakthrough moment is going to be. So the more you can kind of throw yourself in the deep end and surround yourself by, you might be out of depth, but you never know when you're actually going to break through that. So go and chase the next highest thing that you can. Never get comfortable being in, you don't always want to be winning. Like, my whole career leading up was like, I want to go and play against the best, because that's how you be the best. So always just going to try and chase the next opportunity, and then find out whether you're fully in the deep end or not, and kind of get kicked back to reality. But the more you surround yourself with people that are better than you, you can only grow from there.
Yeah, that's a fantastic summary, and I really sort of haven't heard that before in regards to sort of like just continue to press hard and push yourself into the deep end and get spat out the other side. But then at least you know where you are, and you want to actually face the good opposition and lose to the opposition to learn from the opposition. It's a really good way of doing that. The last question I have, which is a new thing which I started a couple of days ago on a podcast, is the Scoreboard moment. What moment in your life do you think has sort of defined you, and is one that you can look back on to say that you can never be taken away?
That's a really tough one to think of just one moment. But I think a moment, and like I've got the picture in my mind, and I'm happy to send it through as well. But it's at the Continental Cup qualifiers. There's a photo of Isaac hitting the ball, and I'm on the floor, and you've got the scoreboard in the background that's kind of a little bit blurry. And if you didn't know the context of it, you wouldn't think anything of it. But we're actually match point down there, and I'm on the floor. And then what eventuates from that photo is, it still makes me sick to this day thinking about that point. But Isaac gets blocked. I somehow, from being lying on the ground, dive and get this ball up. And then Isaac, like, one hand fists the ball over, and the Chinese guys miscommunicate and let the ball land. And that was our match point down to go to the Olympics. So, and then we went on to win that match, and then win the next match against that same pair an hour later, to get our ticket to Paris. So I think that's probably the moment that comes to mind for me. it's really hard to watch back, but that's kind of changed my life.
That is a cracking moment. I need the photo firstly, so I can tell a story about that, and then obviously, like, guess what happens from here? Would be, you know, a very long shot, but it ended up happening and changing your life, and that's fabulous. Mark Nicolaidis, thank you so much for being part of the Scoreboard podcast, telling us your journey from your youth to playing basketball to pivoting towards volleyball, and then being part of the Australian team to qualify for the Olympics, going through the Olympics, and now into a big 2025 and beyond. I really appreciate you taking the time and looking forward to following your progress and catching up.
No worries. Thank you so much for having me. Really enjoyed it.